Alright, this battery is actually almost dead. I'm gonna grab another one. First go around, I guess I forgot to recharge the battery and that went out. But this time, we're back in action. We got 3 bars with the battery and we're good to go. But I wanted to hop on here tonight and let you guys know kind of what played out in my archery Arizona hunt this year. The beginning of the year, I had a run-in down south in southern Arizona with a mule deer. Just being down there in that scenario got me really wanting to kill a mule deer or any deer with my bow. It's a goal that I had been striving to do ever since my dad took me out hunting. Something that I've really wanted to do being a kid, never got the opportunity to until this year, 2020. As you guys watched in my previous video, it was kind of all of after the shot video footage, because what I really wanted to do is to get set up in my blind, sit there because I knew there was deer coming in to this particular spot. I had my DSLR with me, had my GoPro with me, which I'm filming on right now, and it didn't play out that way because I had got down there just maybe an hour later than I wanted to, shot my bow, felt comfortable. You know, it's nice to end shooting on a good note, a good group. So I did, everything felt good, drove down in, parked, and once I parked, I could kind of vaguely see the water hole from where I was at. There's a few trees in the way, but I grabbed all my stuff. You know, I think put my backpack on, put my Coues backpack on, had my bow, had my ground blind that I had, and away we went trudging in. Walked down this hill into the wash and came up the other side, and I could see the water hole in between there. There's a couple taller bushes, but I could see the water hole, see the area, general area of where I was gonna go, hopefully set up. And I get like 80 yards away from it and I see the first deer leave. And like I was telling you in the video, it was a little spike by 2. It was a little 1x2. A little 3-point for all the eastern hunters out there watching this. And it didn't really get me excited. It's like, oh, there's a buck. They're coming into the water. You know, they're coming in. They're thirsty. It's kind of a hot day. Let's see where this goes. Next second, I look to my left, and there's this other deer walking away, and it was much bigger. It's the one I got, and it was leaving the water hole. I immediately stopped because I was kind of in the roadway, like the little dirt road. There's a big bush off to my left. It was taller than me, and dropped all my stuff right there. I think that's kind of what covered me from the deer seeing me, as well as the jets flying over, or the aircraft flying over above me, as you guys could hear in the video too. Previously, I was kind of reverse roles. I was sitting on the other side of the little side hill or the mountain underneath some bushes, kind of concealed. I had 2 spikes come in about an hour before dark, and I was ranging there all afternoon of how far this tree was, that tree was, the rocks were, kind of just getting my bearings straight. So when the deer did come in, I didn't have to pull up the rangefinder and have that movement cause me to not be able to get a deer, because I moved when I should have been holding still because I didn't know how far away it was. Being back by that bush on the road, I grabbed my bow, knocked an arrow. Everything happened so fast. Walked in as far as I could without, you know, starting to crunch and make noise on some of the dead brush. And I was thinking, that's gotta be at least 40 yards. And pulled back. The deer had stopped previous in the last clearing before it got into the really thick river bottom trees and bushes there were. Pulled back, it had stopped, it aimed, Felt good, felt set on the 40 pin, and just let it go. And immediately I could see the deer kick. And once it kicked, I heard a deer just take off. Anyway, the deer that I shot, didn't know it at the time, bolted across the river bottom, just tore off. Like, it didn't even stop, it just bolted. I vaguely remembered about where it went in, but I wasn't 100% sure. And in my mind at that time, I was thinking that it was not the one that I hit, but just the one, maybe the first one that got spooked. So, me being a rookie bow hunter per se, I'm not really good at this. I waited there for a moment, kind of collected my thoughts at that time, and I knew I hit the deer, like I said, just because I saw it kick, but I really wanted to make sure that it was a good shot, and it was really the way I felt that it was good. And so I start walking in. There's a couple of deer trails there, so I start walking in. I know where I shot it from. I know where I shot the deer at. So I walked in there, and as I was walking in, I took about 15 steps in, 20 steps, 15, 20 steps. And the first deer, the little spike by two, he came trotting up back towards where they had came from, because there was a little wash that kind of like went up and came up the little ravine right there. And that's when kind of it hit me that I thought I hit the wrong one. And at that point, when it started walking away, it looked like it was injured a little bit. It looked like it had been shot at. So I had assumed that I hit it. That wasn't the case. And I was later found out, but at that moment, that's what I thought had happened. I found blood hiking in a little bit further to where I shot it at. It was about 10 feet from where I initially shot at the deer is where I found blood, and the blood was really good for maybe 10 yards. I think I said 15 feet in the video, which it wasn't very much, but it probably was about 10 yards. And, you know, pool sizes of blood, maybe the size of $50. So it was I felt like it was a decent shot. I followed it until I first initially lost it, and then wanted to give the deer time. I walked back to where I dropped my stuff and kind of collected my thoughts again, and decided that I should just wait there. And, you know, normally when bow hunters, all the time that I watch, they give them an hour and give the animal about an hour to expire and an hour to, you know, make sure when you're hiking in, you don't jump them up and have them go running off. But who knows if anybody's even still watching this at this point. But it's kind of the way I let it play out to that point. And it was hot. It was over 100 degrees. I think the hottest temperature I read that day was like 103, because it was, by this time it was about 12:30. Hiked back to the truck. I was like, well, I need to take my blind back. I'm not going to need that, and didn't really need my bag at that point. So hiked back to the truck, took a drink out of the cooler, and kind of was going to eat some of my snacks that I was going to eat for lunch that day. Time took forever. I think I finished a couple snacks, drank half my drink, and looked at the clock, and it had been less than 5 minutes, and I needed to pass time by. And so for me, that was the longest part of this whole process. But I remember getting there, I said a prayer, I just pulled out some of the scriptures that we read, and we read a couple chapters from the Book of Mormon. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that was, you know, it helped calm my nerves, it helped calm my adrenaline that was pumping. And I remember before leaving the vehicle that I was prompted to pray again and felt like I should, so I did. And all of telling this is probably more of a personal experience for me than the whole hunting experience, but that's kind of how hunting is for me. It's all personal. It's why I love to be in the mountains. It's why I love spending time in nature. It's kind of just more about me. And I prayed, and I was prompted to pray that my senses to find blood would be enhanced, and that I would find this animal that I had just shot, and that it would have expired quickly. And I don't normally pray like that, but that's what came out. And so I then got out of the truck, hiked back to where I remembered shooting the animal, this Coues deer at, and started making my way into where I had gotten it. And at that point, I hadn't followed blood past, per se 10 yards, and it looked good. And not knowing which animal I'd got, which path the animal had went, I then started over, found the blood, kind of started tracking it a little bit, took a few videos. Blood ended, restarted, had my Onyx tracker. I use Onyx maps to, wherever I pick up an antler, wherever I hike a path, kind of my tracks that I use, I kind of use that. So I had that out, using it, and I just kept running out of the blood trail. Went back to square one again, hiked the trail of where that little 1x2 where I thought I hit it at, and hiked in. I don't know, I did a big loop, followed the tracks that I could, or the vague direction of where it went. No blood. When the animal was walking away, it would have been the adjacent side. It would have been the opposite side of where I would have shot at it. So if the arrow was still in it, it would have been facing the mountain and not me. So I kind of was still thinking that I hit that one. So I hiked in there even more, did some circles, did some loops in that area looking for blood, anything that I could find, and nothing. And I went back to square one again. So this is the third or fourth time that I've started over. Stood where the deer was when I shot it, sat down and was contemplating what to do. At that point I kind of was thinking, well, I guess I didn't hit it good, or that's kind of when all the doubts start to sink in, and the lows of lows. For all of you that have been in the same situation before, you start second guessing yourself, you start questioning your ability to be a hunter, and questioning all sorts of things. And I remember sitting down about where I had shot the deer and looked down, and there's just it's not even a drop of blood. It was like the sand that I was sitting next to had little droplets in it, and then next to it there was a little rock, and it had little flakes, what looked like flakes of blood, almost like it had dried up. So I got on my hands and knees again, because the whole time I was on hands and knees when I lost the trail, and got on my hands and knees, crawled in, found where I found the blood trail good, kept crawling on hands and knees, and stopped at the same spot that I had been stumped on the whole entire time, and decided to give it one more valiant attempt to find this deer, to do right and find the deer. And I remember looking down and thinking, the trail's right here, there's brush right here, and looking at the base of all the brush, and there was blood. Like, not even enough to where I really should have been able to find any blood, but there was blood. And so the deer at that point I knew which one I hit, and it was the one that ran across the wash on a dead sprint. So I kept going, and I had realized that the deer didn't follow the path and just immediately bolted, just took the straight path as a crow would fly, and just went straight, darted straight. I was able to find more blood, and then I finally got onto the wash path and found a few more faint drops of blood every 10 feet maybe. It wasn't enough to get my hopes up, though. It was, I don't know, the size of maybe a pencil tip. Nothing to get your hopes up for. And at that point I knew, I was thankful that I was able to find blood at least, and I was able to keep going. At this point it's 2:45, probably almost 3 o'clock. Got to the beginning of the wash. There's a broken twig, which you guys saw in the video, and because of that I knew I was headed the right direction and I needed to keep going. So I walked the path, and there was one of two ways that the deer could have gone, because there's two major pathways, and I went up the one on the left, the way I was impressed to go, and started making my climb out of the wash and up this little rise and this little ridge line. And I get up to it and kind of start coming around a corner, and I look down, and there's a few more blood spots along the way getting up there, but then there's actually like a pool of blood, and the size of, I don't know, let's say the soda cap, which at that point I was like, all right, finally getting on blood, finally. And keep going a little bit more, probably about 10 more feet, and there's a few more pools of blood, good blood, finally, that I'm able to get on it. At that point, my heart, in my stomach, didn't feel sick anymore. I felt relieved more than anything. I felt happy and good that this happened, or that this was happening, and it kind of helped me think that I was going to find this deer in the next little bit. Little did I know that the deer was going to be right around the corner, and I come around this mesquite bush, and I'm looking kind of which way do I think the deer went as I'm staring at this pool of blood, and look to my left as I'm kind of scanning from right to left. I look, and as I'm looking over, there's a white belly, which I knew was a deer belly, and at that point I felt 100% relieved because I knew I'd found it. And with it being a couple hours later, I immediately knew that the deer had expired there, probably, in all reality, moments after it bolted up the wash when I initially saw it take off. And felt relieved. Walked up, just made sure it was expired, and you guys saw the trailing going in after that. But it wasn't probably the best shot. It definitely wasn't. It went in per se at the hip of, let's see, the right back leg, and diagonaled on a 45-degree angle. I didn't think the deer was quartering away from me as much as it was, or quartering, away from me, but it was, and it went in the right hip and punctured the shoulder. After I cleaned it, it punctured the shoulder of the left shoulder. So it went in on a 45, and I don't know exactly what it got, because I didn't get the animal, I quartered it out. But I imagine it got lungs, and I imagine it probably got heart, and it punctured the shoulder. The arrow was still inside of the deer, so I didn't find my arrow when I was tracking, and some of the intestines were kind of coming out of it, plugging the hole, and I imagine that's why I didn't really find any blood. So I kind of learned my lesson, per se, to really kind of just take my time a little bit more. I just get so excited, and I get buck fever, I'm not gonna lie. I get excited when I'm hunting, so but the rest is history after that. You guys know what happened. There's a store down where we go hunting. They post pictures of the deer that people get when they come in, and it's this little gas station, grocery / whatever you need store. And as I left and came home, my friend went down there hunting. They took a picture of my picture that I got taken, and maybe I'll include that in this too, because that's kind of cool. It's kind of a shout out to them, because not very many places are that into hunting anymore. Anyway, hopefully this year's gone good for you, and we'll catch you hopefully on the next few videos.